Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Thorn's Jungle, coming to you from Perth, Western Australia on this beautiful Wednesday morning. And I say beautiful because it's raining, and I love the rain. But Jesus Christ, it is getting bloody cold. Stupidly cold. Well, I say stupidly cold from Australian standpoint, which is like 8 degrees Celsius in the morning, which is absolutely freezing for someone like me. And it feels even more freezing because I hate the cold. Love the rain, hate the cold. And I've said this before, I love the extremes of weather. If it's going to be cold, I want it to be rainy and stormy, grey, all day. And if it's going to be sunny, I want it to be hot. I want it to be like 40 degrees Celsius. Hot and sunny. Nothing bugs me more than when it's sunny, blue sky outside and it's cold. There's no excuse for it. So, weather, do something about that. And of course, no joke, as soon as I started recording this, some man has started up his bloody weed whacker whippersnipper lawnmower and is going to town right out the front. But luckily, this microphone hopefully only picks me up and not this human mammal. Anyway, today's episode is going to be a fun one because it's primate related, and I love my primates, as you may or may not have known. And I especially love baboons. Every time I go to Africa, I want to see baboons. Like, baboons for me are kind of like the epitome of an old world monkey. Macaques and baboons. Baboons just have such an old world look to them, where like they're just so different to other monkeys. Like, they just look so. I mean, if you see a baboon, you know it's a baboon. And I'm not talking about mandrills like Rafiki from The Lion King, or the gelada monkeys, the bleeding heart baboon, as they're sometimes known as, because they're not actually baboons. But physiologically, they look very similar because they've got that real dog-like muzzle to them. And they do look like baboons, but they're not actually baboons. Now, baboons are in the genus Papio. So mandrills are in the genus Mandrillus, and gelada monkeys are in the genus, Therapithecus, which is actually a sick genus name. Therapithecus means beast ape. They're not apes, mind you, but Pithecus means ape, and Thera means monster or beast. So beast ape, such a cool genus name, but they're not baboons. They are in the family Cercopithecidae, along with all old world monkeys, mind you, but they're not actually baboons. So there are 6 species of baboons, and I'll briefly go over the 6 species. But I just needed to do this podcast because of how fascinating baboons are. Like, I don't think people give baboons enough credit, and it's definitely due for baboons because they are so much more complex than a lot of people probably think they are. Actually throughout most of Africa where baboons are found, they are often considered a pest. You go to a rubbish tip in Cape Town or other countries, and you're likely to see troops of baboons living there because there's food, there's shelter. So, of course, it's going to bring in a very intelligent animal because, hey, why hunt anymore when there is food just getting thrown away and there's junk that we can hide under and live in, and shelter from the weather. But when they come in closer to human habitation, or should I say when human habitation comes closer to where baboons live, that's where you get the animal-human conflicts going on when they're in close quarters to one another. Baboons, yes, will break into people's houses. They will steal stuff. They will uh, sometimes mug people. And baboons can be aggressive. There's no denying that. And baboons are big monkeys, and they have very imposing canine teeth. Very big, sharp canine teeth. Longer than a lion's. So when a baboon bites you, it will do a lot of damage. So they do have a reputation. Sometimes it's deserved, sometimes it's not. It is deserved that, yes, baboons are smart, cunning, crafty, sometimes aggressive animals. Definitely deserved. But is it their fault or is it ours? You know? So yeah, and I decided to do this episode because yesterday I posted a video about what I witnessed on one of our game drives on one of the trips that we take people on to South Africa, and we're driving along a road, and I knew this road. We got a good chance of seeing baboons on this road. I knew it because I'd seen baboons on this particular area before, and it's a very good place to see baboons, and they're Shakma baboons. So they're the biggest, the largest, the tallest and longest of all the 6 species of baboons. They're massive monkeys, and we're following a troop of them along this road. And I'm filming as I do, and I've got a big grin on my face, going, "Yes, baboons," because I love seeing them every time. And I noticed a vervet monkey, like following this troop of baboons. I'm like, geez, that vervet monkey's got some balls. Blue balls, mind you, because vervet monkeys have this bright blue hue to their nads, and it's actually really, really lovely blue color. Um, anyway, and I'm like, wow, does this vervet monkey have a death wish? Like, what is it doing? Because baboons eat vervet monkeys. So, I mean, some prey animals will follow closely to predators because it's almost like the closer I get to it, the harder it is for me for the predator to like ambush them. So that's why sea lions and stuff will swim sometimes closely to great white sharks and sort of duck and dive around them, because great whites are normally ambush predators waiting on the animal to not see it and then bang, hit it from the bottom. Clever tactic. But this vervet was in like chilling out with this troop of baboons. And then the baboons would move off, and that would be the perfect opportunity for the vervet to leave and get away. But no, it followed them and was chilling out, sitting with them. Then I saw something very strange. The vervet hops up onto like the I guess it's like a side fence for the road where a very young baboon was sitting, and it starts grooming the young baboon. Starts getting all up in it. It looked like it was kissing it, like making out with it and grooming it. And there's a bunch of female baboons right next to it, not caring. And then the big male sitting over there, he's not bothered. It was very bizarre. I was like, and baboons have been known to adopt animals to a certain degree. Whether or not they can actually nurse them and feed them is a different story, because often these adopted animals die because they're different species. They don't know really how to care for them. But it has happened. So I'm thinking, has this troop of baboons adopted this vervet monkey? But the more I sort of looked into it and re-looked over the footage, and the fact that there were other vervets that we had seen not far away, like I kind of came to the conclusion that what is more likely is, and some animals do this, it's called infant parking. Bears do it. Walruses do it. It's a thing where an animal will leave its young somewhere, go hunt, forage for food, and then come back. And bears have been known to dump their cubs uh, onto campers or even hunters sometimes and then walk off. So a hunter will be sitting there, bear comes along with its cubs, leaves its cubs sometimes on the hunter's lap, and then goes off, because bears have associated humans with like most other animals, like predators and that, don't really want to mess with them. So this is a safe spot to leave my cubs while I go hunt. It's called infant parking. So not the same with this baboon troop, but it is possible that the the adult baboons just kind of wanted a break. Young baboons are very playful, and young baboons have been witnessed going into vervet monkey groups and playing with them, but not the other way around. I don't think it's ever been documented that a vervet has gone into a baboon troop and done the same. But that's really what it looked like in this situation. The vervet monkey had gone out of its way to follow this troop of baboons, play around with the young baboon, groom it, and it's mutually beneficial. There was some sort of symbiotic relationship going on there, if my theory is correct, that the adults get some time by themselves to forage, to chill out, while the vervet sort of keeps the young baboon occupied, like a little babysitter. The vervet, what does the vervet get out of it? Well, he gets protection. Baboons are big monkeys. Not a lot of things want to mess with them. So this vervet monkey, being amongst this troop of baboons, gets protection, and the baboons get a nanny, get a babysitter. So it was quite fascinating. That is my theory um, about that situation, but it was super interesting, and that's why I love it. That's why I love going to Africa. Often we do this same itineraries or very similar itineraries every time we go, and people ask me, "Oh, don't you get bored of it?" No way. No way in hell do I get bored of it, because I get to witness amazing behavior that I've never seen before. Every single time I go, we either see a new animal, new behavior, new something. So, yeah, hell no, I can't get bored of that place. Not a chance. Um, but yeah, I thought that was super interesting. It kind of inspired me to do this episode on baboons because there are some things to do with baboons that will absolutely blow your mind. And let me just check to see if this is still recording because I would hate that I didn't press record. Yes, it is recording. Fantastic. That would have been a nightmare, and it has happened before. I've done an entire podcast episode and it hasn't been recording. Okay, so what are the 6 species of baboon? So we'll start off with the most northern baboon, and that's the Hamadryas baboon. Now, you might have seen Hamadryas baboons in movies like Shakma, but don't get confused with the Shakma baboon because it's spelt differently and it's a different species of baboon. Hamadryas baboons are the only baboon that lives outside of Africa. It lives on a tiny bit of the Arabian Peninsula. Um, it lives in like real far North Africa, and once lived in Egypt and was worshipped almost as a god. But now they've been expedited; they're locally extinct in Egypt. But they are cool looking baboons. They have kind of like a red pink face and skin and real silvery hair, almost sometimes white looking hair. And out of all the baboons, they are the ones that look the most different to the rest of the baboon species. And I think on the movie The Rundown with The Rock and Stifler, um, the baboons, they're getting attacked by Hamadryas baboons. They live in huge troops as well, up to like 250 individuals sometimes in troops. So they have massive troops, cool looking baboons. Then we've got the Guinea baboon, um, which sort of inhabits like real forested areas, and is kind of the type specimen for all species of baboons. And there's some conjecture that all the other baboon species are just subspecies of the Guinea baboon. So, for example, the Hamadryas baboon is Papio hamadryas, that's its scientific name. It would then be Papio hamadryas because the Guinea baboon's scientific name is Papio. It's the type specimen. And so there's kind of back and forth on that, but like I think they've been isolated long enough to where they've genetically changed enough to be called separate species. So we've got the Hamadryas baboon, the Guinea baboon, then we've got the olive baboon, which is a huge baboon. It's almost on par with the Shakma baboon. I think on average the Shakma baboon is a little longer but the weight is very similar in weight. Um, and they're cool looking baboons too. They've got like a big mane. They're like super buffy, a real big mane on them. Um, and they're common throughout like West Africa and like Uganda and stuff like that. So when I go to Uganda in January, I'll get to see olive baboons, and I haven't seen olive baboons before, so that's another tick off my primate list. So that's going to be really cool. Then you've got the yellow baboon, which is and another interesting thing with the olive baboon. Its scientific name is Papio anubis. Cool scientific name, Anubis, guardian of the dead. Then we've got the yellow baboon, which is basically yellow in color. It's a yellowy, uh, brassy sort of color, yellowy brown sometimes. Obviously, each individual is different, but they are called a yellow baboon. Their common name is yellow baboon because they do have like a golden blondie color, and I think they've got there's some. Oh yeah, I think it's a yellow baboon. They've got like yellow, no, pink rings around their eyes. I think it's a yellow baboon. Anyway, their scientific name is Papiocynocephalus, which means dog face or dog headed. And they do have a really long, sort of extreme downwards pointing muzzle, similar to a dog. But mind you, most baboons have very dog like muzzles. But Papiocynocephalus, the yellow baboon. Then we have that a baboon called the Kinder baboon that does share a border with the yellow baboon, and they do overlap. And there has been hybrids between the Kinder baboon and the yellow baboon. And for a long time, they thought the Kinder baboon was the same species as the yellow baboon. They were grouped in Cynocephalus. But then I'm not sure of the date, but it wasn't that long ago where genetic studies showed they were actually genetically different and they're their own species, the Kinder baboon. But they look quite similar to the yellow baboon, and that is Papio kinde is the scientific name of the Kinder baboon. Then we go south, and these are the baboons that I have seen the most of. Actually, I haven't seen any other species of baboon in the wild except for the Shakma baboon. The Shakma baboon is the biggest of the genus Papio, and its scientific name is Papio ursinus. Ursinus, Ursid, Ursidae, bear. So the bear baboon. How cool is that? And because they're a big baboon. And they don't have a mane like the olive baboons or some of the other baboons. But they are big and sometimes lanky looking, cool looking baboons. I love them. Um, I just love all primates in general. So that's your 6 species of baboon. Okay. And each species has different but quite similar in the grand scheme of things social structures, but each group or troop of baboons, their social structures can differ slightly to one another. For example, in when was it? Where was it? I think it might have been Kenya, somewhere in Kenya, maybe. Um, they found a troop of baboons that all the males had died off. Well, all the dominant males had died off because of a bout of tuberculosis. So the social structure of that troop of baboons was a super peaceful social structure because there were no big dominant high-ranking males to kind of you know cause conflict within that troop. So that was an unusual one, but that's kind of like an unusual example there. But each structure and each social structure differs between each troop, but it's still quite similar in a whole as a whole, right? Where there is high-ranking males, there is a highest ranking male. There's females, they look after the young. Other females will help in raising that infant. which is really cool. So yes, baboons can be aggressive, but they can also be very, very caring, and they're great mothers. And even the fathers can be really good. Like if there's a fight, a male will come in and take the infant and take it off somewhere to protect it and get away from that conflict. So baboons are great parents. They absolutely are. There are cases of infanticide, yes, but not so much in baboons because all males have the opportunity to mate a female. So infanticide generally happens when there's one main alpha that has the pick of all the females, and he wants his offspring to his progeny to sort of he wants to be the father of the offspring. Is what I'm saying. And if he becomes the dominant male, overthrows the dominant male, becomes he will kill the infants because they were sired by the past dominant male. But that doesn't happen so much in baboons because each male has an opportunity to mate with a female. And most of the time, it's the female's choice of who she mates with. And the interesting thing with baboons is the females, for the most part, generally pick the nicer, gentler male to mate with. And if you know your typical alpha male, it's not always him, and same with chimpanzees. Just because you're the alpha doesn't necessarily mean that the women want to root you, right? Because you can be a jerk. You can just be an asshole and they don't like you. So with baboons, sexual swelling is very, very obvious in female baboons. That's when you see their asses like puff up, their genital, it's called genital swelling. Their genitals really puff up into like a big red cushion. Now, don't mistake this for callocytes, which are just general hardening of the skin. Ichthyal callocytes, they're called, which are found on both both sexes of the baboons. That's just from sitting on their ass all the time. It gets calloused, and it helps as padding while they sit. But sexual swelling is very different to ichthyal callocytes. Like it looks like a red inflatable tire around their like backside and genital areas, and they will go up to the male that they've selected to mate with, and basically shove her ass in his face, and it's on. That's flirting. That's baboon flirting. But a funny thing with baboons is that has been seen in like olive baboons and shakma baboons. The bigger alpha male, although he will let the males mate with the females, he plays mind games on the male. So the male will be mating with the female, and he'll come over and just sit right next to him and just stare at him. Like he plays mind games with them, like psychologically. And the smaller, sort of lesser ranked males kind of like, oh, I feel a bit inferior now, because it's like the big males come along and gone, let's see what you got. you know, he's just sitting there with his schlong out. Hey, keep going. I'm not telling you to stop, but you're going to feel real uncomfortable. It's like if, a dude was having it on with a woman, and this giant dude that's well endowed just comes and sits butt naked just to watch. You're like, oh, now I feel really inferior. So that's another, like, that's the complexity of baboons, of their psychological faculties. It's pretty interesting, and that's just the tip of the iceberg with baboons. Like, it gets crazy, man. Like, it gets crazy. I'm reading a book right now called Baboon Metaphysics, and it's fascinating. They are like, and I find this with basically every single animal, that the more we study them, the more we watch their behavior, the we underestimate the intelligence and complexities of animals so much. And I read a book by Frans de Waal, who recently just passed away. Frans de Waal was a primatologist, and he studied mainly chimpanzees and baboons. He studied their behavior, and he wrote a book called "Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are?" or something to that extent. And it turns out we're not, because the experiments we impose on animals to see or test intelligence in animals have been thought up by humans. So we're putting, so perfect example is tool use in gibbons. So we know chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, and those apes use tools. So they wanted to see if gibbons could use tools. So what they'll do is they'll have the gibbons enclosure, and they'll put inside the enclosure like a stick, and outside the bars like food. All right. And they noticed the gibbons weren't picking up the stick to move the food closer to the bars so they could grab them. So they're like, okay, gibbons can't use tools. When in fact, if you look at a gibbon's hands and the morphology of a gibbon's hands, the gibbons were unable to pick the stick up off the floor because their hands weren't conducive of that movement. They've got very small thumbs, they've got long fingers. So the experiment they gave these gibbons wasn't an accurate experiment, because it's like, okay, well, the gibbon can't do it. And when they actually made the experiment so the gibbon could use a tool and get the food closer to the bar so it would grab it, it did. And they've done experiments with elephants like this, elephants using tools. But most of the experiments, they started realizing, well, we've just given it an experiment, given it a challenge to do something that it can't do anyway. That's like giving a human an experiment. Oh, let's see if we can get the food at the top of this tree. It'll have to fly up and grab it. It's like, well, I can't fly. So the experiment's failed. And now whoever's given us that experiment's like, oh, they're not smart enough to get up, to fly up there. It's like, I can't fly, you stooge. So the more experiments that we make that can test intelligence for an animal that goes along with its morphology, and we find that, holy crap, these animals are way smarter than we give them credit for. Corvids, for example, ravens and crows. The more they look at the intelligence of those birds, the more they're like, this is insane. We're talking primate intelligence here. Anyway, I digress. But it's the same thing with baboons. Not only are we finding out how intelligent they are, but also how complex they are, and the way they think and the way they do things. And a perfect example of this is, and I'm going to read this from, normally I don't read stuff, everything I talk about is just off the top of my head, but I want to read you this little example of baboons. And this is a Shakma baboon called Jack. And I'll read you a bit of his biography. Jack was the pet and assistant of a double-leg amputee signalman, James Wide, who worked at the Cape Town Port Elizabeth Railway Service. James, his nickname was Jumper, because he had they nicknamed him that because he could jump from train to train as it was moving. And funnily enough, that's how he lost his legs. That's why he's a double amputee. Anyway, so he was in a town and noticed no joke, noticed a horse and cart coming in with a bloke sitting in the cart and a baboon driving the horse and cart. The baboon was driving this bloke into town. And this dude, James, was like, what the hell? So he went and talked to this bloke. Now, I'm not reading anymore. I can remember this pretty good. So he went and talked to this bloke and was like, you can train baboons to do that? And the guy's like, yeah. Yeah, I've got them painting my house, I've got them, fixing my car. And I'm joking about that. But he was surprised that, because back then, obviously, none of these experiments on baboon intelligence had been done. So he's like, okay, sell me this baboon because I'm a double amputee. This baboon could come in handy. So after, some back and forth, he eventually decides to sell James the baboon. And James, working as a signalman, so he was in charge of basically when trains were coming and they sort of separate into different tracks, one goes right, one goes left, one goes straight. He was in charge of pulling the lever, which would light up a light and I guess move the track so the train would go left, or another train would go right, or go straight. So basically, pulling the lever, certain either back, forth, middle kind of deal to move the tracks and signal the trains which direction they're going. So he trained this baboon to do that, to see which direction the train was coming, which light to signal the train to and direction for it to go in, and move the lever. He trained the baboon to do that. And what happened is the authorities had heard of this going on and were obviously like, nah, 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 nah. We can't have a monkey operating the train signals. That's a no go. So what they did is they tried to fire him, but James was like to the railway authorities, come down and just watch Jack do his thing. Please, just come and watch before you make any decisions. So they come down, they watch Jack working, and are blown away because he did it perfectly. And I think the statistics showed he did it better than most human workers. So not only did they let Jack and James keep their job and let Jack the baboon continue working, they put him on the payroll. They put the baboon on the payroll. So they paid him with beer. Let me just read this because this is pretty funny. They paid him a ration of beer. And where how did I just lose that? See, this is why I don't look at stuff off the laptop because I um lose stuff. Anyway, they gave him a ration of beer, daily beer. I think it was like half a bottle or something, and food rations as his pay. So they were paying this baboon, and he worked that rail for 9 years until eventually dying of tuberculosis. So for 9 years, this baboon was working on the railway system, and he's look. It's even got his occupation: assistant to disabled railway signalman, railway signaller. It's mind blowing. So that is the potential of what baboons can do, but it goes even further. So there is a place in Africa, like a certain region of Africa, where the goat herders actually, I don't want to say employ because I don't know if the baboons are paid, but they have baboons working as goat herds. Now I'll say that again. They have baboons, or a baboon, herding the goats. And the baboons are that efficient at herding goats, they are better than most actual human goat herders. And I'll tell you why. So the baboon will sit high above on the hill, watching over the herd of goats. It'll chase away anything that's trying to mess with the goats. It keeps the goats together. And at the end of the day, when the goats have to come back down to the barns or whatever, the baboon hops on the back of a goat, rides the goat while herding all the rest of the flock of goats. Is it a flock of goats? I know it's a flock of sheep, but I'll say flock of goats. There's got to be a different word for that. Anyway, and so he herds them back to sleep for the night, to their sleeping quarters. But the baboon is that good and knows the goats that well. It'll separate the goats. So obviously, one pen isn't big enough for all of them, so they get split into like maybe 3 or 4 different pens. The baboon knows which baby goat or kid belongs to which mother. Because all the time when human goat herders put them in their enclosure, they don't care if the baby goats are separated from the mothers. But the baboon knows exactly which baby goat belongs to which mother, will be able to recognize each individual baby goat's cry and know which mother it needs to take it to. And it hasn't been taught this. That is pure out of the like kindness of this baboon. It knows that that baby needs to go to its mum. Nobody, no human taught it that. Like, if that isn't like a complex, caring, sensitive animal, I don't know what is, because the human goat herders don't care. The baby will get its milk the next day when it comes out. So that blew my mind when I learned that. Like, that it can recognize that specific baby goat's cry, know what mother it belongs to, and out of the goodness of its heart, will take that baby goat and take it back to the enclosure that its mum's in. And there was this one famous female baboon goat herd. Can't remember her name, but I believe uh, she reintroduced, I think it was something like 56 baby goats, and I think it was 56. Yeah, but she took 56 baby goats, back to their mums one night that were all separated, and knew 56 each individual baby goats cries and which mum it belongs to. And this is documented stuff. And she's not the only goat herd baboon that was, used. They were used for a long time, and still I believe they might be used now. They're called the Namaqua people. Actually, they were used up until the 60s, but they might still be used now. So how mind-blowing is that? To think that baboons are just these aggressive, pests of an animal. Like, man, they are so much more than that. And the more I read into certain baboon behavior, the more I'm blown away. Like, for example, I can't remember which country in Africa it is, but there's a junkyard where the baboons will steal the puppies from street dogs. They'll steal the puppies, take them back to to where they live, their little area, raise the puppies as guard dogs. So if there's dogs around with the baboons, that's less likely for those baboons to get into any strife. So I don't want to say they're pets, but they're raising these dogs for protection. And you know what's strange? That is a very big reason as to how and why humans domesticated dogs, wolf-like ancestors, because they noticed that these canids were coming close to them where they slept and stuff, because there's food scraps. But it's mutually beneficial to have dogs there because they're good guard dogs. If there's predators, they will alert the people. So that's how dogs started becoming domesticated, because of that mutual symbiosis. Mutual symbiosis. There's that term again with the vervet monkey and the baboon. That dogs keep guard, they keep lookout, they fight off any potential predators, and in return they get food scraps. So it's crazy that, and I mean, I will say this, that it has been witnessed dogs kidnapping, baboons kidnapping the puppies, and it has been seen dogs living with baboons, but nobody's actually seen the baboons raising a puppy to adulthood. So whether or not the puppies are dying in the care of these baboons, and just by chance, already adult baboons are living with the dogs are living with the baboons. We don't know, but what is a likely scenario is the baboons are raising these puppies uh, for guard dogs and protection. So how mind blowing is that? They're almost domesticating animals, and humans are the only animal that domesticates another animal. So pretty crazy, right? Anyway, that's all I've got to say about baboons. And that's all I got to say. That's a lot to say about baboons, and you can probably tell that I think they are super cool. And funny thing, anyway, for people that are watching on YouTube, this statue here is meant to be a baboon. I don't know what the hell that is, but it's supposed to be a baboon. And I saw it, and I was like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I don't know what that is, but I'm buying it because it's so weird. It's like a wooden statue that's about 6 inches long. That it's got a beak for some reason. So yeah. Anyway, I hope everyone is having a good week and has a great rest of your week. Again, there is merchandise for sale on the website biothorn.com.au. So you can buy a Thorns Jungle hoodie, t-shirt, long sleeve shirt. They're really cool shirts. You can buy yourself a pouch, a leather pouch that has the Biothorn logo on it. Obviously, the courses and an ebook isn't available just yet, but still working on it. And I hope to see you all, or not. I won't see you, but you'll hear me. I won't hear you, but you know what I mean. You might see me on the YouTube. Anyway, this is getting complicated. Anyway, see you next time on another episode of Thorns Jungle.